Hello and welcome. This is Working Class to World Class. But before we go any further, I do have a little favour of you. If you could hit that follow or subscribe button, then that would be a massive help. Thank you. In this episode, I chat with a man who has graced our screens for many, many decades. Originally from Knightswood in Scotland, he tells me all about his incredible career, his journey through life, and every time I think of him, I always think of the red carpet. Breaking through the barriers of adversity, I'm Lynn Lester, and this is Working Class to World Class. So Ross, absolute pleasure to have you here. It was really good to catch up with you again.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Delighted to be anywhere.
Well, are you not in LA right now?
I am indeed, high up in the Hollywood Hills. Yeah, I mean, it's bizarre that, I mean, if I look to my right here, I look out and I can actually see the Hollywood sign, and it's the weirdest thing. People always say, "Oh, you must get used to it," and I go, "Never, not once." Every single day when I get up and look at the Hollywood sign, and I smile and I laugh a little bit and just chuckle to myself and think, how the heck did I get from, Knightswood to Hollywood? So it's funny. I mean, I smile every single day at it. And what's lovely is it's such a great reminder of where I am. I know it sounds ridiculous. And we were filming the other day up at the Hollywood sign. And again, that weird thing, we were so lucky because we were filming literally on the Hollywood sign, so you could touch it, because if you come here you can't ever get that close. You can get behind the Hollywood sign, which is a great hike, but you can't actually get down and touch it. And there I was touching the letters, and again I was looking down thinking, I can see my house from here.
Like a pinch me moment. Now for anyone tuning in, I didn't put the husky voice on for you. I do have a viral, but I didn't want to miss up the chance chatting with you. So people will be like, who the heck is that?
I love it. Maybe I should try with it. I'll do the one day all watches will be made this way.
I could literally do movies.
You can do them, yeah. In a world.
So you were talking about Knightswood to Hollywood. I mean, that's got a ring to it. And I must admit, I had no idea that you came from a working class background. So a mutual friend of ours who put us in touch was saying, "Oh yeah, working class." And I'm like, Ross King, are you sure you've got the right person? I was like, really? And that's a complete stereotype. But can you sort of take us back? I mean, I guess down memory lane to where it all began. Like, where were you born?
Yeah, I was born in Stobhill Hill Hospital in Glasgow. And originally we lived in Earl Street in Scotstoun, 132 Earl Street, in one of the tenements right on the top floor, the penthouse. So that's where I lived there till I was about 5, and went to Scotstoun Primary, which was obviously close to Earl Street. And then we moved to Knightswood, to another council house in Knightswood. And then I went to Bankhead Primary, which was round the corner. The most amazing thing about Bankhead Primary was that it was literally round the corner. So I could wait until the bell rang and run to school and get there still in time, which was, you think about it, the most ridiculous thing in the world. So that was it, yeah, with my mum and dad, David and Isabel, my sister Elaine. And yeah, very much. It's funny, we were talking about this the other day. I had some friends who'd come out, and their mum wanted to come up to the house, and we did some pics at the Hollywood sign. And I was saying, it's so funny, the things that when you were a kid, and I'm not sure if kids do still say these things. When it came to your birthday or it came to your Christmas, and you were asked what you wanted, you said, I'd love a brand new bike, because you never really got. I don't ever remember getting a brand new. I got nice bikes, but I never got a brand new bike. And it was really funny that was part of the vernacular. I'd like a brand new something, because you were just so used to getting something that was a hand-me-down or second-hand or whatever. And also, I remember saying to my dad one time, which still made him laugh all these years later, because it was when I'd been very young and at school, and I'd come home and I said to my dad, "So we're middle class?" And he said, "What?" He said, "We're working class." And he said, "Why did you think we're middle class?" I said, "Well, in my head, upper class is obviously posh and got lots of money, and working class doesn't have much money. And I said, but we're middle class because we're okay and we've got, we have food, and I get a present at Christmas and I get a present on my birthday. And it was so funny that he said no, but it was an interesting way of looking at it. And I that was it was a kind of funny little eye opener, but it also made me appreciate how hard that mum and dad worked to give Elaine and I a life that I never ever thought of as, like being poor or anything like that. But I mean, we didn't have money. We never went on holidays abroad or anything at all like that. We went to, we go to St Andrews, we went to Nairn, we went to Granny's Hill and Hame and Dornoch. We did all the Millport, Rossi, Dunoon, and then eventually at one point we go down south. We go to it'd be Bournemouth, and then aunt and uncle lived in the Isle of Wight, so we'd go there a lot of times. So, and it was in the car with mum and dad, and it was a Glasgow Fair fortnight and all the rest of it. So it was just very, very, very normal.
Yeah, because you don't know any different, do you? That is what you know. And is it true that you met Charlie Chaplin in one of your trips to Nairn?
Yeah. Amazingly enough, when people always say, "Who's the most famous person you've ever met?" and when I say Charlie Chaplin, then they just laugh. And I say, no, I really did. When I went to Nairn on holiday with the family, and I was probably about 5, something like that. Elaine, my sister, is 4 years younger, so she would be obviously a baby. And we got to Nairn, and we'd been told that Charlie Chaplin used to go to Nairn and still liked going to Nairn because he was a golfer and loved golfing and loved, up the north of Scotland. And so the whole thing was that he really would go there on his holidays, and people didn't believe it. And then I remember being in the main street in Nairn, and this big black car, it was like a Daimler or a Rolls Royce or something. And everyone said, "Oh, that's Charlie Chaplin." I was like, "Yeah." And again, you're 5, because in your head, Charlie Chaplin's got the bowler hat and the moustache and all the rest of it. And we jumped to what happened was I was down with mum and we were walking along the beach, and it was at that beautiful dusk time. And I was thinking, oh my goodness me, what's all going on here? And I remember my mum said, "Oh my goodness me, it's Charlie Chaplin." And I was like, what? And again, thinking, where's the man with the bowler hat and the moustache and twirling the walking stick? And there was obviously this older man. I remember he had a big dark coat, a hat, like a sort of Homburg, I think it would have been. And we walked over, and my mum said, "Charlie, hello, Mr. Chaplin, and this is my son." And I shook his hand, and then jumped to what was the most incredible thing was that when I started collecting memorabilia, when I got into the silly old business, then I said to Mum, "Oh, why didn't I get Charlie Chaplin's autograph?" And then she said, "Aunt Betty has got Charlie Chaplin's autograph. She got it when he played in Glasgow at one of the old theatres." And I said, and she said, "Aunt Betty will give it to you." And Aunt Betty was just one of my favourite aunts. She was just a lovely, lovely lady. And I went round to the house, and Aunt Betty got it from the sideboard. It was one of those old classic sideboards, and she pulled the top drawer, and away back in the corner was Charlie Chaplin. If I remember rightly, because I haven't got the photo out here, but it was written in pencil. I think it was 1932, and I think she got it like the Glasgow Empire, one of the old theatres. So just amazing. So there we are. Yeah, the most famous person ever met, Charlie Chaplin, and the
And you
Queen.
were 5 years old with the Queen, yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
she
the
does
Queen.
she does count.
Yes.
And so, I mean, that is definitely a claim to fame. And when you were growing up, what did your mum and dad do for a living?
Mum and dad were. Dad was a chartered engineer. Mum was the most wonderful housewife. She did some part-time work as well. She'd originally worked at the Ear, Nose and Throat Hospital in Glasgow, and that was it. And just very normal. Dad was. They were very musical, very sporty, and so there was always laughter and there was always music in the house. And Dad was a great footballer and a great all-round sports person. They both loved tennis as well. The whole family, Elaine and I, got into all the sports at a very young age. Dad was really good at football and probably should have been a professional, um, but that was where my love of football came from. Apparently, my first words as a baby were "kick a ball," because my dad would always drop the ball to and go kick a ball, and apparently I said kick a ball before I said anything else, and that was probably the last time that I properly did kick a ball. As my career didn't quite flourish the way that we all hoped and thought it would. But yeah, so that was it. Just again, just a
Yeah.
very well. I mean, again, I say normal. This is the weird thing that I always thought that I had the most normal upbringing, and then when you hear about other people and what they've gone through in their lives, uh, that what is not normal, and what really many times is not normal is to have the most loving parents, loving sister, to have a family that all gets on, thankfully, and gets on really well, and not to have some of the trials and tribulations that people unfortunately have to go through. So, what I always thought was just very normal probably was kind of slightly abnormal.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, if you think of the area, so people listening in, like Scotstoun and Knightswood, there's a lot
Yeah,
of really underprivileged parts within
yeah,
that. And, for you, I guess you must have seen a lot of poverty growing up, because as you were saying, you got a bike or you got a present, so you
yeah,
probably felt quite middle class, as you were saying, although you
yeah.
weren't. But what did you see around you, like with other kids?
Well, it's interesting when you look back because part of you thinks, am I looking back in this with rose tinted glasses? And again, you come to America and people go, "Oh my goodness me, what was it like? Glasgow, was it really violent?" And you think, well, no. And then I'll come back and I'll meet up with my old school friends, and then they'll say, "God, do you remember the time we got chased by the gang at the Chippy and all the rest of it?" And then those fights and things, and and different places that I would go to play football, and it's again, it's like you don't want to romanticize it, but equally you don't want to look at it with rose tinted glasses. But then again, as people always say, if you're there and
Yeah,
it's what's around you, you adapt to it, and you don't think too much about it. So certainly, all my friends, nobody had money. Nobody was really referred to as posh or anything, because we all just lived in council houses, or we lived in the high flats, as they were always called, at Kirkton Avenue. And we just all go out and play, and play. We'd play football until it was dark. That's what I always just remember, that we would just go out and play till it was dark, and then it was a bit like mum or dad would say, right, the minute the street lights come on, then get home. And that was like the final whistle at the football, as the score was like 137 to 95 or something. It was just that really funny thing. So I think there was so much of what people think of and talk of, but again, when you're part of it, you don't really notice it just as much as maybe other people do, or when
yeah,
you reflect on it and think, "Oh my goodness me, yeah, that was a bit scary then," or different areas that you had to be careful. And so yeah, it is fascinating when I talk about it with people that I went through my childhood with. Um, and funnily enough, Kenny Mackenzie, who is my best friend at school, still one of my best friends, um, when we went back just last year, we always kept saying what we must do is, because we lived round the corner from each other in Knightswood, and we always said what we'll do is we'll get together, we'll meet where we used to meet to go to school, and we'll walk all the way to school, and we'll walk all the way back, and just chat all the way about oh, remember so and so lived there, or so and so lived there, and all that stuff, and remember the shops, and then when Knightswood Shopping Centre had been built and how things changed there, and all the little bits. And it was fascinating, and amazingly enough, we actually bumped into two of our old teachers, which was the weirdest thing in the world as well, who were kind of like, what are you two doing like together? You almost felt like, what are we dogging it off from school or something? It was very, very weird that we'd been caught after all these years. So it was so wonderful. But again, to go through it with somebody that you've been through it with, and just to say, was it that was it that bad or was it that good or what how was it for them? So yeah, fascinating.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I mean, going down memory lane just must be brilliant. Like coming from Hollywood and then you come to Knightswood, it's like a pinchy moment, isn't it?
Oh, so much so. And also when, I have a lot of things that are around here that remind me of things. And it's funny, I've got a TV studio in the house now, which again is just ridiculous. Um, but on the wall, I've got from the scarf that I had for the League Cup final in 1971 when Partick Thistle won the League Cup. And, I've got that on the wall. And it's, again, at times I just look at that and think, oh my goodness me, there it was, going to Hampden Park with my dad and my Uncle Joe. And just that amazing time. That was 1971. I mean, it's forever ago. Um, and also, I have another thing, again, with the TV studio, is that when I was a kid, when I was 16 and I started to work for Radio Clyde in Glasgow, I did everything. I was the studio factotum. I made the teas, the coffees, photocopied, you know, wrote down the football scores, edited tapes, did absolutely everything and anything, which was such an amazing experience. But one of the things was that I would rig the football grounds. So you'd go out to Love Street, Paisley, and throw the cables over the stanchions, because this was before the days of, like obviously mobile phones and things that made life so much easier. And I always remember the radio van had this mast on the top of it, and you had to get it up. And the radio van mast never worked. And you would hit the pump, and you would jump on top of the truck and try and move it again, and all that stuff. And what happened was that it was a cold, wet, typical, like October, November, afternoon, so dreich, and then it was the rain start, then the hail started. That's what I remember. And I had my little thin Radio Clyde jacket, because you were so proud when you got your Radio Clyde jacket that you could wear your Radio Clyde jacket. And this rain came pouring down, and then the hail. And I remember trying to put the mast up, and I kept slipping and falling. And eventually, at one point, I was lying. This is true. This is absolutely true. I was lying flat down on the roof of the radio van, and I wasn't crying, but I was sort of, and sobbing would be the wrong word. I don't know. I was just like, and I kept thinking, what is this all about? What is this all for? And so every time when I go to the studio and I flick a switch, and suddenly the studio lights up and the camera goes on and everything, and I think of that, whenever I hit that switch, I think of the kid on top of the radio van going through all that, and I think that's what it was for. Now that
Yeah.
I'm so lucky to be here to do what I do, and to get a chance to do what I do, and to be able to do it the way that I do it, that's what it was all for.
See, that's you coming back to reality. And
Yeah.
one of the things I want to ask you is I'm really keen to know how because I live in Clydebank, so
Uh-huh.
how you get into Radio Clyde. But before that, I would love to know what were you like as a kid?
Wow, what was I like as a kid? It's always one of those tricky ones, isn't it? Because you think it's probably for other people to answer. Um, what was I like as a kid? I mean, I was very, very sporty. Played every sport that I could do. Loved every. There was no sport that I didn't like or enjoy or do, and was going to hopefully at that time become a footballer, a professional footballer, or a PE teacher as well. So I loved that. I loved performing as well. And as I said, mum and dad very musical, and mum played the piano. Dad was in the Salvation Army and played the euphonium and was the choir conductor and the band leader at times. So I was surrounded by that. So I would be also, and then here's a funny thing to drop a name, but I was with Donny Osmond in Vegas a couple of weeks ago. And I was telling him, I said that I had this purple cord suit, because that was like Donny's big thing was purple, and I had this purple cord suit, and at weddings I'd always be the one that was like the little kid that would get up to sing. And so I do a Donny Osmond song. Then as I said to Donny, I let you down. I did the little Jimmy Osmond, long-haired lover from Liverpool song. So I was that kid that got up, and it was weird that you think all those times of kind of being not pushed too much. I wouldn't say mum and dad ever pushed me, but that experience again that you never ever thought about at the time. Then all those years later, when I've been lucky enough to have done West End musicals, etc., all that stuff comes back to you, and you think, I was on stage when I was 4, 5. So it's weird. So yeah, again, what was I like as a kid? Small, on a charm bracelet. You used to find me on a charm bracelet. I'd turn up some underpants. No, that's right. I immediately go into, yeah. My mom and dad used to put a pork chop around my neck so the dog would play with me, and wrap my play piece in a map and send me off. And no, so yeah, again, I don't know. I think I was a pretty good, decent kid. I didn't get mum and dad into trouble. I was a bit mischievous, I would say. I was that kind of one. But again, like so many people in the bit, I do impressions of the teachers, and then Kenny and I would just make each other laugh across the classroom, and so there was a few. I would get into trouble like that at school, not bad trouble, but it was like mischievous stuff, or stop trying to make people laugh, or stop being silly, and all the rest of it. So yeah, I mean, and again, really, I mean, so thankful, happy, school days, and happy, youthful days.
Wow, it sounds as though you loved the audience back then. So there you go. You
Yeah.
got your dream job.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think the first time I remember at Bankhead, and we were doing, I think it was Dick Whittington, and I remember had to walk onto the stage at one little bit, and I remember tripping, and then I remember thinking, oh no, I've screwed this up, and then it got a big laugh, and I kind of jumped up and did a funny sort of like da and it got a laugh, and I think it got applause. And maybe that's just my rose-coloured spectacles and ears going back, but I remember thinking, oh, this is nice. I like getting laughs. I remember thinking, this is nice. That warmth that you feel from an audience, and a lot of people in the theatre will always say there's nothing better than that warmth from an audience, that just applause, and yeah, just that being with an audience and just getting that response and getting the laughs and knowing that there's another laugh coming. It really is a magical thing.
Yeah, nothing really beats it. I used to do amateur dramatics, obviously not with this voice. I didn't. It used to work well one day, and I used to love, like, I was always in the chorus. I was never strong enough as a singer, but I loved that. And even in my job, like, I MC in front of hundreds and hundreds of people, or thousands of people online, and I do love that reaction and the buzz. And I mean, one of the things I would love to know is, obviously you kind of got a sense of it. You got a bit of hunger because you were,
Yeah.
I guess, like a bit of a comedian and showman from a young age.
Yeah.
So when you were sort of going through school, like, talk me through the steps, because I guess, was Radio Clyde your first job that was kind of like your big break, or did you do stuff
Yeah.
before that?
Yeah, well, it all came about in a very wonderful way. So there I was at school. So again, there was no real thought. I mean, I was like a showbiz kid, but with no showbiz to go into, really, and no obvious route to do it. And then what happened was I was going to be a footballer. That was the idea. And then at school, so I was that kid that would go into the careers guidance back in those days, and it'd be like, okay, so you're going to be a footballer, because I was the captain of the team and all the rest of it. And then, but also as a kind of fallback was that I'd be a PE teacher, because you could be a PE teacher and a part-time footballer. And Frank Coulson, I think, who was at Partick Thistle at the time, it was like, he's a PE teacher and plays for Partick Thistle. So it was like, I was like, that's it, that'll do for me. And I loved the idea of being a PE teacher, because it just seemed like you would just, you go down to Scotstoun Showgrounds, get the ball and throw it out and go, right, off you go, lads, play. And then you join in a little bit. And I thought, I like this idea of being a PE teacher, being a footballer. And because Dad had been a really good footballer, that seemed to be the way. And then I had some trials, and I went to Partick Thistle, when I was a kid, and I always remember going into the manager's office, and the manager at the time was Bertie Auld, who the legend who'd been a Lisbon Lion for Celtic, and he was now the manager. And Jackie Husband, who was another wonderful member of the crew there, and he took me in and he was like, "Boss, boss, boss, I see, young boy," and Bertie looked at me, and this is the truth as well. He looked at me and he went, "Aye, son," and he had this big cigar, and he went, "Aye, son, you'll wear out more mirrors than football boots." So I think I took that as a bit of a, yeah, that's maybe the way to, that will not go. And then it was funny when I said to mum and dad, I then suddenly thought, I was watching footballers and realizing that by the age of 30, that your career was coming to an end. And there was a little bit of me, again, which I'd be honest and say that I kind of wanted to be a pop star. I think there was that too. And then again, I remember watching a show, and I think it was Noel Edmonds was hosting whatever the version of the Brit Awards was. And then the next year, Noel Edmonds was still hosting it, but some of the bands and the pop stars that had been there the year before now had gone. And I remember thinking maybe it'd be better to be a bit more like Noel Edmonds than to be, the pop star that is now no longer in favour. So that was I remember that being a little bit of a sort of eye-opening moment. And then, weirdest thing of all, I started doing the school discos. And I thought, oh, this is quite fun. And Roddy Hood, who was my maths teacher, and I said, look, I'm in a bit of a quandary. And also, the careers guidance people were not happy with me because I'd gone from being, he's going to be a PE teacher and a footballer, and now he's going, I think he wants to go into show business. And mum and dad, when I told them, they said, look, we'll support you and back you, but we don't know Coco the Clown. I think that was Dad's exact words. We don't know Coco the Clown, so we can't get you into the circus. So it was like, what are you going to do? And Roddy Hood, bless him, was the man who said, look, hospital radio is apparently a great way to get in. Loads of people have gone that way and talked about the different people that had moved on, and said that Mrs. Lawson, who was also a math teacher, her son Alan works in sound at the BBC, but he is involved in hospital radio. So I went along to hospital radio through Alan, met the man who ran it at the time, Eric Simpson, and we had a chat about how hospital radio worked, and you become a volunteer and you go around the hospitals and pick up requests, and eventually you might get on air. So, and at that time I'd never ever thought about being a DJ or anything at all like that, and I thought, oh, this is quite fun. So then they put me in a studio and they said, right, well, just try you in a studio and just see how it works. So then they said, and this was also very much in the day when you used to talk over the introduction of every single song, every record. And so they said, okay, so what we've got, you play it, and then you time it, and you go, that's 20-second intro, and then you can just hit the stopwatch. And I said, oh, I don't need the stopwatch. And they said, why? I said, because that's a 4-bar intro, or that's a 2-bar intro. And they went, oh. And I said, yeah, I've been a singer with bands since I was a kid. And again, being pushed up there, mum and dad at weddings, I just knew when to come in. So they were like, oh, okay. So then I did a little bit where I kind of talked over the song up to the vocal starting. And they were like, wow. And then I remember Eric bringing people in to go, look at this kid. And I think I was 15 or something at the time. Look at this kid. And I kept... he won't crash, was the term, won't crash a voiceover. And I kept doing it with songs that I'd never heard, but I just knew that's when the vocal started. And then I was really lucky, and I got a little show in my head. It was fairly soon after, called Ross King's Disco Delights. And I had my own little jingle, which I remember was such a big thing, having a jingle with your name on it. And then jump ahead a little bit here, because I'm boring everyone that's listening to this, that I was then told that another next step was to become what was termed the Saturday boy at Radio Clyde. And this is, you worked on the Saturday programme, Saturday Special, and then you worked on the sports programme. Excuse me. So I was like, okay, good to know. And then I heard that one of the guys was leaving, who had been the Saturday boy, a guy called Ian Cowser, was leaving to become a technical operator full time. So there was going to be this vacancy. So we wrote this letter, and I knew it to go to Paul Cooney, who was in charge of all the sports and things. And so Dad and I had to find a way. At this time, before Radio Clyde had moved to Clydebank, it was in Anderson Cross, right in the heart of Glasgow, in a bus station. Well, trying to find where this was, it was like a mythical place that you had to get in this lift and up these stairs and up that one. And then eventually you found the door that said Radio Clyde. And I took this little letter up. Dear Mr. Cooney, I hear there's a vacancy for, the Saturday boy. I'm working at Hospital Radio, etc., etc. I would love to be considered. And that was it. And then Paul invited me in and gave me the job, which was amazing. So Paul Cooney was the man that started me in my proper professional broadcasting experience and gave me so many opportunities, taught me so much about the way that radio worked. And that was it. And then I worked there on a Saturday. Then the scoreboard show became Super Scoreboard. It became this longer show. We worked in that. Then we did a Wednesday show where I started working in that. And Richard Park was the host of Super Scoreboard. And then I worked with him really kind of as his roadie for a while as well. And, go to the gigs and hand out T-shirts and organise the competitions and silly stuff that we did then. And that was a great learning curve, and get little bits on air. And then I was eventually very lucky that I got a show, which was through the night. My first show was a Friday into Saturday, 2 till 6 in the morning. And then I was also working in production full time eventually. And then I took on the Sunday into Monday show, 2 till 6. And I would finish the show at 6 o'clock on a Monday morning, run back home to my mum and dad's, get in, have a shower, have some breakfast, and then go back in to work in production till whatever time. It was funny. There was never you work 9 till 5. It was you worked from like 9 till whenever. But also you didn't want to leave. You loved the place so much. So yeah. So that was my introduction to the world of radio.
Well, I mean, it does take that one person that believes in you. So Paul Cooney, I'm sure you're very grateful to him.
and still, one of my greatest and best friends to this day, and we speak every other day. And I still rely on him for pearls of wisdom, and he was such an amazing mentor, and continues to be. So yeah, just so again, as you say, so lucky, Lynn, when you've got someone that believes in you.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing, isn't it? For people to get to the next stage, I think you can't underestimate that mentor in your life, whether it's your parents or your friends or, your guiding star, someone that can help you see you beyond your lenses. And the one thing I wanted to ask is, how do you go from Radio Clyde, because that's a big deal in Glasgow. Radio Clyde is, I remember Radio Clyde, you were a star and you still are. But how do you go from that to Hollywood? It's very different.
The interesting thing, there's loads of little steps along the way, and I'll try and make them as kind of as quick as I possibly can. So then I was very lucky that in Glasgow, I was taken on by a great manager, David Meehan. And my thing always was I wanted to do TV as well. So then we were very lucky. We got a kids show that started at BBC Scotland over the summer, called CTV1, which was live every day. So of course I was absolutely in my element. I loved it. And again, following on from doing live radio and live theatre, and doing my first pantomime in Glasgow at the Pavilion. So that was all amazing. And there was still a part of me that really wanted to go to the Royal Academy as well, because I felt that I'd kind of cheated a bit, that I jumped into this other world and not gone to the Royal Academy. And at that time, people were going there like Alan Cumming. And I was always like, oh, and Alan and I had many conversations about it over the years. But then I went into that, so I got TV, then I hosted Children in Need. Then I got offered to go to Radio 1, which I didn't do. But I went to Capital Radio, so Richard Park, who I'd taken over the lunchtime show from at Radio Clyde. And Clyde was amazing, as you're saying. In those days, it's still a great station. But then, we would do road shows and you'd get 30,000, 50,000 people at them. It was unbelievable. And also, I followed in the steps of a legend, Tiger Tim, who'd completely ripped up the rule book and had made such a difference for every young Scot, I would say, who wanted to go into radio. He changed it forever, and the Tiger was the biggest local radio star that there will ever be. And I was so lucky. He was the man at the time who gave me my nickname, Ross the Boss, and I worked with the Tiger, and that was incredible. So again, really lucky there. So then I went in, so I did that TV, and then the idea was that I wanted to do more TV. Then I heard there was a new show which was going to be made called Young Krypton, which was the kids' version of the Krypton Factor. And David and I applied for that, and there were 3,600 people applied for it. And then a guy called Rod Natkiel, again, who to this day is still a friend and a mentor, was a great producer, and he chose me out of the 3,600. I got that show, then I got a Saturday night show at Granada. So it all moved like that, and then I was doing more radio and doing more TV and doing more theatre, and then I went into musicals, and I would do the Cliff Richard, as you can see the poster behind me, that the musical of that. I did Bits and Joseph, I did the Rocky Horror Show. I played Frankenfurter in that, which was just the most amazing experience. And then I kept picking up more and more TV. And then I would do Radio 5, and then I did a show called Pebble Mill for the BBC, which ran for many years, which was great, and that took me all over the world. And that weirdly enough was, or not weirdly, was the first time that I'd come to America. And I remember landing here and thinking, I'm going to live here one day. Don't know why, I just knew that I was going to live here. And then continued to be lucky to do theatre, radio, musicals, plays, TV. And then in 2000, I thought, you know what? I think the time is right. I want to move to America. And I was married to my wife, Charlie, at the time. And she'd had an amazing career in the West End. And she said, yeah, let's just go. Let's give it a bash. So we moved out here. Didn't have any real deal set up, nothing at all. But also, going back to when I was saying about how I really did want to go to the Royal Academy or something similar. So when I came out here, I went back to acting class again and did acting class for 2 to 3 years. And then at the same time as that, weirdly enough, I got a chance through a bizarre competition thing at KTLA here, which is a big station. And I worked there, and I was their entertainment correspondent, and I did weather for them as well. I had the most bizarre, wonderful time. And at that time, I started picking up more stuff back to the UK. And I'd been writing out here, and so that was adding more different strings to my bow. And then jumped to that GMTV. They were like, well, we hear you're in America. Can you do some stuff for us? And I was like, sure. And then I did stuff for them, and then it became Daybreak, and then it became Good Morning Britain. And obviously, Lorraine Kelly's been such a great pal and a great person to work, for and with over the years. So did all that, and so at one point I was doing everything, which just got a little too much, but it was great fun. And that was it. So then came out here, did a few movies, did some plays, did some TV. Still getting away with it, Lynn. Still getting away with it.
Wow. I kind of want to ask, is there anything you've not done? But do you know, I need to tell you a story if my voice can keep up. So do you know that Radio Clyde was the reason that I got caught being off school? So it was one day, my parents were older, and one day my mum said, do you want a wee day off school? And I was like, okay. And we went down Clydebank Shopping Centre, and as you said, the road shows, Radio Clyde was there. And of course, who ends up on the stage? And it was a yes and no game. And I didn't know how to play, and I thought you had to say yes or no. And the guy had to stop and say, no, you've not to say yes or no. Anyway, if that wasn't bad enough, that was fine. It went in the Clydebank Post with my picture on. So it's like, if you were ever going to be nabbed, you were in the press now. So that's my fun memory of Radio Clyde.
Dogging it. You were caught
totally
dogging it.
Right. And my mum knew as well, so she was incriminated too. And I need to ask you, so you talk about you're in Hollywood and you come back, say to Knightswood or to see your family. What goes through your mind, like, honestly, like, now that you are living this brilliant life over there, as a working class lad to
Yeah.
start with, what goes through your mind?
Um, Weirdly enough, not maybe not as much as you would think. I mean, it's just because Glasgow is home and always will be home. So I don't really think about it. It's funny when there's some funny things. I always think in Knightswood, and I remember Billy Connolly saying to me one time, "Hey, but Rossi, he says the whole thing about Knightswood is it was ahead of its time. It like big streets. It was like America." And I thought it's so funny that's one thing I do think when I go back and you go down Alderman Road. It's big and it's really wide for like a just a normal street. And it was so funny. He was saying Knightswood was like America, and I always thought it was so funny. And I do think of that. But again, it's I don't know. It's a weird thing to even talk about. That when I mentioned when Kenny and I went for this walk, back through school, and we walked through Knightswood Shopping Centre. So when we were kids, Knightswood Shopping Centre was just being built. And then, weirdly enough, a bit like yourself, the Radio Clyde Roadshow, but in those days it wasn't like the big thing that we ended up doing, like with the 30 and 50,000 people. This was just like the Radio Clyde lunchtime show with Richard Park would come there. And I remember going through, and there was a guy, Johnny McCalman, who became head of production for Radio Clyde. He worked with Richard on the show. And then they decided to have, not like the yes, no, but they decided to have a keepy up competition. And so they said to me, "Oh, son, do you know where we can get a ball?" And I went, "Yeah, the Card and Gift Boutique." And it was funny, I then went to the Card and Gift Boutique and got this ball and then did the keepy up competition. So actually, I was a little bit like you. I was on Radio Clyde as a kid going to school. I didn't dog it, though, like you, though, then. I then did it
Dear.
in my lunch hour, then went to school. So that was weird. So I just think there's so many memories like that. And even when we went back, Kenny and I, we were having a laugh, and then we went by, where he lived and where I lived, and we talked about our parents and friends and different people. Went by the school, and that's that usual thing where the school that seems so big is now so small. But it was weird going by, and then it was funny people coming out of houses and just shouting and all very nice. Then there would be like this woman came out and she went, "Oh, my husband went out with your sister," and all these wonderful things. So I don't know. It's home. So, and I don't know if I'll ever think of it in any other way. And I think you do want to revisit things. So I want to go back more, and I want to go to Millport again, which I haven't been to for a long time. And even when I would go back with mum and dad, we would do things. We would go to, let's go to Largs, let's go to Helensburgh, and all those things. And I also think as well, I was telling somebody, it's a really bizarre story, that one of the times we did a road show, and as far as I can remember, it was Barshaw Park, and there was something like 50,000 people or whatever. And there was certainly like forever, and arrived by excuse me.
I feel as though it's contagious now through the screen.
So we're doing the roadshow in Barshaw Park, and there's whatever 50,000 people or whatever it was, and maybe there were 5 people. Maybe I just made that bit up. No, there were a lot of people, and I arrived by helicopter, and I had a couple of like minders, and I remember getting on stage, and the dancers were out and all the rest of it. And it's very funny that Gary Marshall, that I was doing the roadshow with at the time, apparently I went, "Here we are, blah, 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 bang." And then I turned to him and I went, "I'm bored now." It was quite funny because I was just laughing at the whole hype of the helicopters and all the rest of it. And then I remember later that day phoning my mum and dad and saying, "Let's just go for a wee drive down to Helensburgh and go and get fish and chips and sit down at the front." And my mum saying, "All right, are you going to bring Campbell, who was my sort of minder and assistant at the time?" And I said, no, I'm just going to come down and pick you up and we'll go. And they were like, "But will it be okay?" And then I realised that mum and dad were oh, my leg just fell off. Mum and dad were thinking, like, this kid despite the fact I was just their son, but this kid that was on this stage with all these people sort of screaming and shouting, and that I had to arrive by helicopter and be, and thrown in the back of a van at the end of the gig and all the rest of it. But it was that weird thing where they kind of like the lines had been blurred, and I was like, no, it's listen, I'll go to Helensburgh, and maybe somebody might go hi or something, or I mean, also this is before cell phones, so it actually was when people might say, "Can I have an autograph or something?" So it was bizarre that mum and dad, the lines had got a little bit blurred for them, but not for me. And so yeah, I think just Glasgow's home, and it always is, always will be. And I love the banter when I come home, and I think that's one thing you miss here. The banter of Scots is just magnificent. Sometimes it's a bit cruel, but you know what? You put up with it because it's fun.
Yeah, it's what we're used to. I mean, your
Yeah,
parents must be. I mean, they must be so proud. When you're that wee boy that was in the
yeah.
theatre or played the football, and they must look at you now and go, and your family must think wow, that's our best.
Yeah, I mean, I again, mum and dad have passed now, but I had
Yeah.
such amazing times with them and with my sister, and indeed with my sister and her husband Jim and Holly and you and my niece and nephew. And I'm lucky that I get to share a lot of what I've done, with them. Um, and again, just to share it all, and like with mum and dad, dad got to see me play football at Wembley, a couple of times. I played in a couple of big games with the ex pros and what have you, and they got to see me on stage at the London Palladium. They got to come to the TV shows. They got to meet so many people. It's quite funny that even now, people within the business, if I meet them, they go, "Oh, mum and dad, have they gone now?" And they go, "Oh, I remember David and Isabel." And they'd have like, Bradley Walsh be like, "Oh, Dave, I love Dave. We used to have lovely chats." And all these people within the business that, because they were very much my mum and dad, who would travel to be, even if I was doing Charlie's Aunt a play in Middlesbrough, they would just turn up and things like that. And it was just wonderful to have that relationship. And again, it's like with my sister, I'm so lucky I got to go to Wimbledon last year. I'm sitting in the royal box at Wimbledon with Sue Barker on one side, Billie Jean King on the other. And again, you can't get away from it. You are that kid from Glasgow who's at home, and a hand has come through the TV set and just plucked you out and popped you down, and you're sitting there going, "How the heck did I get here?" And I think also with mum and dad, it was funny very quickly that it's a classic story of my mum, which was that I was going to be on Celebrity Squares, the show, if people remember the game show. And I phoned mum and I said, "Mum, I'm going to be on Celebrity Squares." And she said, "Oh, son, that's just brilliant. That's brilliant. I hope you win the car." And I was like, "Mum, I'm not a contestant. I'm actually one of the celebrities."
It's so funny.
And again, they would do things. Not, I mean, I think Mum knew what she was doing that time. I think because she was a very funny lady. But I do remember hosting Sport Aid in Glasgow at the Scottish Exhibition and Conference Centre, and there was about 10,000 people. And again, thinking, Mum and Dad must be proud of me today because I knew they were there at some part. And the weirdest thing was they managed to fight their way to the front of this crowd, and I could see them. And I tried to get down to them, I couldn't. There was so many people, and there were these crash barriers and whatever. And I was probably about 20 feet away from them, and I could see Mum and Dad, and I gave them the old double showbiz, thumbs up. And my mum looked at me and she went, "Speak slower."
Well, she is your mum after all.
That was it. Exactly. And she was right.
Yeah, well, I bet in America.
Yeah.
And Ross, my final parting question has to be, what would you say is your superpower? Why you? Why have you had this success?
I I would, God, if there was such a thing, I probably would say tenacity. That's the one thing that I always say to people. You've got to be tenacious. You've got to really go for it. You've got to work at it. You know, Gary Player, I think, was the first person ever to say, who was a legendary golfer, to say, the more I practice, the luckier I get. So that's my whole thing. And never to be put off. And especially in my silly business, you hear no more than you hear yes. So you just got to get used to that and just pick yourself and get on with it and realize that it's not. And mum always said this thing, and my sister Elaine and I laugh about it, but it's so true. You know, she always said, just do your best. That's all you can do. And I'd go off to play football and I would think, and mum go, okay, son, bye. Just do your best. That's all you can do. And I would think, well, of course I'm going to do my best. But then when I got to about 20, 21, I realized it's all the things that you can do to do your best. So, you know, even now, if I'm going for an audition for something, I think if I know my script, if I know my character, I know what I should be doing. Have I been, you know, am I meant to be really fit for this part? Have I been working out? Have I been doing this, etc., etc.? Everything you can do to do your best, because then if you go in and you do your best, and if it's not right for them, there's nothing else you can do. You can walk out and go, I did my best. Then I do the same if I'm on a cruise ship doing a show. You know, have I been doing my vocal warm-ups? Have I learned the songs? Have I written some new jokes? Am I doing my best? And then, you know, as we all do, you don't always have brilliant nights on stage. But if you've done your best, that is all you can do. So I think that's it. It's a simple thing. Be tenacious. Just, you know, pick yourself up all the time. You're going to get more knocks than you will get the accolades. And just do your best. That's all you can do.
Well, thank you so much. And I think next time you play, you're either at Knightswood Shopping Centre or you're in Alderman Road, and obviously we're definitely going to catch up for sure.
I love it. I love it, Lynn. That's a definite. Yeah, we walk through the supermarket.
I'll take it any day. Thank you
And
so much.
a rolling slice. Get me a rolling slice.
Oh, there you go. You haven't lost your roots.
No, not at all. I'm faithful to my roots. I dye them every week.